Good afternoon and welcome to AMGC's In Conversation with webinar series. So my name is Charmaine Phillips and I'm the AMGC Director here in the Northern Territory. I do want to let you know that today's session will be recorded so you can access it afterwards if you have to leave. I'd like to begin the session with an acknowledgement to country, of course. So in the spirit of reconciliation, AMGC acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today from whichever land you are on. So thank you for taking time out of your day or your lunch hour to join in the conversation. This series of 30-minute webinars have been designed to give local manufacturers information on national bodies that are available to support and assist them with their manufacturing endeavours. However, if you are joining us from outside the Territory, welcome, and I'm sure you'll get a lot from the information shared. So today I have with me Robert Akers. He's the Commercial Technicals Consultant at the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation, otherwise known as ANSTO. So Rob and I are going to touch on three main areas in our conversation today. First, we'll talk about ANSTO and how ANSTO can support Australian manufacturers. Then we'll cover ANSTO's work and support in additive manufacturing and high performance parts. And finally, how ANSTO can support manufacturers looking to diversify into the aerospace, defence and medical sectors with material development. So today's conversation will take about 20 minutes, so it's a quick one. If you do have any questions, I've allowed 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the conversation to answer them, so please pop them in the chat function. You will be on mute and we'll take you all off at the end so that we can discuss. So let's get started. Rob, welcome.
Thank you very much, Charmaine. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. So today's webinar aims to give our audience insight into ANSTO. Can you start by introducing us to ANSTO and how long it's been around and why it was established?
Sure. So ANSTO actually started as the Australian Atomic Energy Commission back in 1953, became ANSTO in 1987. So this year we're actually celebrating 70 years of nuclear expertise in Australia. Our first research reactor, HIFAR, operated at Lucas Heights between 1958 and 2007, after which it was replaced by our current research reactor, which is known as the Opal reactor. ANSTO's role is essentially to be using nuclear science and technology for the benefit of all Australians. Now, this is including improving health outcomes through nuclear medicine, acting as a trusted advisor to the government on nuclear matters, and leading the development of a nuclear capable workforce for Australia.
Wow. So I guess in what ways can ANSTO support Australian manufacturers?
Sure. So ANSTO operates a lot of Australia's large-scale research infrastructure. So this is things like the Australian Centre for Neutron Scattering, which uses the Opal reactor, the Centre for Accelerator Science, and the Australian Synchrotron, which is here in Melbourne. And these offer unique materials characterization capabilities, which can look at parts or samples or materials or feedstock right down to the atomic scale. As our role as the nuclear agency, part of our work involves developing materials for use in the nuclear industry, and our expertise with working with these materials and characterizing these materials is actually directly translatable to some of the challenges that we see that are faced by Australian manufacturers, particularly when we're looking at materials and material performance in extreme environments. So this is things like heat, pressure, radiation, corrosion, hydrogen, because these are all relevant to the challenges that we have to look at in nuclear materials.
Absolutely. It's becoming such a focus, that work in the nuclear space with everything that's coming up going forward. So yes, ANSTO has a vast range of capability in different areas. So let's talk specifically, I guess, about the work that you're doing in relation to additive manufacturing. As there seems to be a lot more business nowadays moving to integrate this technology into their organisations.
Absolutely.
Talk me through what ANSTO is doing in this area and some examples of some of the testing technology that ANSTO can undertake for manufacturers.
Sure, couple of examples I can talk about. So there's one case where ANSTO helped out with product development for additive manufacturing with Conflux technology. They're based in Geelong, and they primarily produce high-performance heat exchangers with additive methods. Now, these parts have a very complex internal structure, so doing quality assessment and process optimization can be very difficult if you want to do that non-destructively. But using the X-ray tomography, so the CT that we have at the Australian Synchrotron, we're able to do fast, non-destructive inspection of Conflux's parts, and this helped them to identify defects and optimize their process. So looking at what sort of defects are they seeing when they've got particular parameters, how can they twiddle their knobs and pull their levers in such a way that they eliminate those and produce better parts. So from the success we've had with them, Conflux actually see the synchrotron as a critical part of their operations and are regularly using our testing at the synchrotron in their quality control processes. But they're also sending their engineers to the synchrotron for some R&D projects as well. So they're getting great experience with how the techniques we offer can actually be applied to Conflux's processes. Another example is from the Australian Centre for Neutron Scattering. So this is using neutrons to map residual stresses in parts. We've actually got a paper published on this using this technique on additive parts with SPEE3D, using one of their additive manufactured rocket nozzles. By using these stress maps to look at where stress and strain is in a part, we can understand where all the residual stresses are and how the design is affecting that. So SPEE3D can adjust their designs, look at their build settings, or even post-production processes like heat treatment or hot isostatic pressing to make sure that they're actually producing high-performance parts. So that's just two examples of how our large-scale infrastructure are helping with additive manufacturing, but there's a whole lot sitting behind the fence that we can delve into. The trick is just ask the question of us if you've got a curly one, and we'll see if there's anything we've got that we can help with.
So for those on the line, SPEE3D is a company that is based here in the Territory as well as in Melbourne. I know I'm going off a little bit off topic, but can you explain how easily accessible, I guess, your facilities are to businesses here in the Territory?
We're a national organisation, so we don't just work with the people that we're geographically located with. We'll engage with any Australian manufacturers, and the ease of it, I suppose, depends on how difficult your problem is. Unfortunately, a lot of our capability can't go up to the Territory and help out. So it relies on getting parts into the site, but if you can get it through the door, we can do something to it, essentially. And we've done very large scale parts. Like I think probably the biggest thing we've done a residual stress map on was a section of natural gas pipe that was suspended in the rig, and we're able to do some stress mapping on that. And the smallest thing we've had through, I don't know, micrometeorites and novel drug compounds. So there's a huge range of things we can do on a whole range of materials. And it costs you nothing to ask the question. So if you think you've got a problem that we can help with, contact me, and we're happy to talk about what it is we can do to help you. We're trying to make it very easy to engage with us, and there's a whole range of ways we can do that.
Right. So up here in the Territory, we've got a little project that some of you may have heard of. It's the Amphibian Aircraft Industries AAI project, who are building the, I guess, amphibious aircraft or in the aerospace industry. So I'd now like to turn to high performance advanced manufacturing parts for aerospace, defence and medical sectors. So for those businesses wanting to look at diversifying into these key growth sectors, how can ANSTO support manufacturers with that material development?
Sure. So when you're talking about high performance applications, particularly when you're using additive manufacturing, a lot of what you're going to be looking at is the performance of your parts under those extreme conditions that we see with the nuclear industry. And there's a few specific things that we can do to help with, particularly with the additive parts. So looking at one example is ANSTO has a lot of experience with hot isostatic pressing. And this uses a special furnace that produces high temperatures and high pressures of gas to apply pressure evenly to a part on all sides. So you're doing a heat treatment and also a bit of a pressure treatment that can refine microstructure of a part. It helps to resolve a lot of the common defects that you see in additive parts, as well as some other sintered parts like ceramics or a lot of other different types of manufacture. And it produces a part at the end that's a lot stronger and has higher performance properties like hardness than you see from the raw part or just using a conventional heat treatment. ANSTO operates the largest hot zone hot isostatic press in Australia, and our researchers and engineers have decades of experience in this process through the development of waste encapsulation systems that we've been running for our nuclear medicine program. So we're very good at doing the materials and process development using that technique to help people produce the best performing parts that we can. An example that's a little different, however, is where we've helped Titomic develop lightweight layered shielding materials to protect sensitive satellite electronics from space radiation. So this, there's a big increase in CubeSats and low Earth orbit going on at the moment. We see it all over the place, right? One of the problems in that operating environment is actually the radiation that's around in space, and this can have effects on your electronic systems, and depending on the application, that could be potentially catastrophic. So what Titomic were doing was optimizing some shielding material to protect these electronics, but you want it to be, lightweight as well as high performance, and sometimes those things don't necessarily go together easily. So we were helping them to optimize the design. So to optimize the different layer thicknesses and what order you put them in, doing that experimentally would require producing a lot of different parts and testing them individually, which is expensive. It's time consuming. Using our expertise in how radiation interacts with materials, we're able to help them simulate the different material combinations to narrow down those choices, and then actually test the shielding capabilities with our gamma irradiation services to provide that validation part for Titomic. So again, it's coming back to that, not just the design, but the actual part qualification and validation. So this is where ANSTO's experience in interaction of radiation with material helped Titomic save money and accelerate the commercialization of this new product for their partners. And there's a huge range of capability sitting behind the fence that can do just that for different forms of radiation testing for the space industry, as well as other sectors of manufacturing.
Yeah, and I guess when you're accessing capabilities like these on a project basis, it is more cost effective to engage with an organisation such as ANSTO than potentially trying to recruit someone with that expertise into your business.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of it is quite specialised, and if we're able to provide that specialist advice on a project basis, absolutely happy to do so. The trick is engage us early in the process, so we can actually go in on some of these project bids as a partner or as a collaborator, and then build a scope around that, so it's actually part of the project scope, rather than trying to come to us when you realize it 2 years down the line that you need this stuff and trying to find room in the budget for it. So we can actually provide that advice all the way through.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good lead into how AMGC is working up here in the territory with supporting projects in these growth areas and looking at these technologies. We do have our AMEF funding up here, so we've got $7.5 million to invest in commercialising projects and products, and there has to be 2 collaboration partners. So ANSTO is, I guess, the key collaboration partners for anyone working in that defence, advanced manufacturing, aerospace kind of medical space. And yeah, please reach out to Robert and have a conversation.
Please do, yeah.
So I guess this brings us to our last point. I told you it'd be quick and simple. So finally, your role, Rob, is commercial technical consultant. Tell me a little bit about your role within ANSTO and how interested manufacturers can get in touch with yourself?
Sure. At the basic level, my role is to be looking at where that overlap is between what the industry partners need and what ANSTO's capability are, and where that overlap is where we really want to target our service offering. So we don't expect people in the community to really know exactly what it is we do behind the fence to great detail, or how it can be used for their process. So that's why but my role exists, is to take those questions about what's your business or your manufacturing question, and I can turn that into a science question or an engineering question, use my knowledge of what sits behind the fence to figure out, okay, we can use this and this to answer these questions for you, and find that way that we can really use our capability to help the Australian industry. So the best part of my job is talking to manufacturers and learning about what they do, and what their challenges are and how we might be able to help. There's multiple ways to engage with us, as we've been saying, from short term, I've got this critical problem I need to solve really quickly. I just need, a quick $10,000 job to solve it and get my export contract out, through to multi-year projects, where we're starting at the EOI process of a tender or a grant, and partnering through that life cycle in different ways. So easiest way to get in contact with me is through my email address, which we can put in the chat or make available. Always very happy to talk to anyone who wants to learn more about what we do and how we might be able to help. So very, very much grateful for this opportunity, Charmaine, to talk a little bit about what we do today.
Yeah, so I guess the main point there to reiterate is that key early engagement and having that conversation, so that you've got access to the expertise to then look into the future. And also having you, Rob, in your position to, I guess, translate some of the scientific terminology that ANSTO has in different areas and how that can be related back to industry, because I know that may become some barriers for the smaller SMEs in manufacturing. It can be a barrier
for me too sometimes. We're both a science organisation and a government organisation, so you can imagine we're jargon and acronym heavy. So if I can help translate that into some meaningful terms, that's always good.
Absolutely, and I think that's a big value add in helping understand what ANSTO does in plain English for industry. So thank you for that. So problem. Before I open the floor to any questions, let me briefly go through the main points that we spoke about. So firstly, we spoke about ANSTO and how ANSTO can support Australian manufacturers. We spoke about your work and support in additive manufacturing and high performance parts. And finally, we spoke about how ANSTO can support those manufacturers wanting to diversify into those growth areas with material development. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to either pop them in the chat or take yourself off mute and have a conversation. Rob's just popped his email address up there, and Rob is happy to answer any of them. We've got 5 or 10 minutes, so please engage and ask questions. Anybody want to take advantage of Rob being here? All right, so one has come through with sounds like a wonderful working partnership between ANSTO and industry. So 2 quick questions. So Robert mentioned that it doesn't cost anything to ask the question, but is there a cost involved once the collaboration kicks off? Is the first question.
Yep. So yeah, that would depend exactly what the scope of the work's going to be. When we're dealing with commercial engagement, there's a fee structure in place, and we have set fees for what like a fee for service job would cost, and then if we're looking at collaborations, then it can get a bit more complicated, determining what we're contributing, what the partner's contributing, what we're getting out of it, and so forth. But that's something that we scope out and determine before you're up for any money. So it's a obligation-free quote, as they used to say on the old infomercials.
Yeah, and some of that, I guess, can be classified as R&D with the R&D
yes,
incentive.
Absolutely, yeah. We're an R&D tax provider, so you can use the R&D tax incentive for working with ANSTO,
which is great for industry. Second question was, what about IP protection or protecting the knowledge and or creating that improved product together?
Yeah. So again, that's something that we scope out at the start of a collaboration. So what IP is where we try not to be particularly prescriptive with it. So anything that we're developing in terms of local process, where we're how to use our capability to do a problem, is typically what we want to hold on to. We're not really going to jump on any of the partner's IP and try and exploit that. But if we're helping you to a significant extent, it's all something that can be decided ahead of time, as I say, before we start the engagement. And I find that's the best time to have these discussions. Some people watching may know Tim Boyle from our innovation team. He's actually working on a big IP piece for ANSTO at the moment. So it's something that's front of mind for us. And yeah, it's something we handle in the contracts before we get too far down the track.
Great, that's really good to know for industry to know. Do you allow site visits or industry to walk through and have a look at what is available at ANSTO at different sites?
Yes, so there are different tour options available through Lucas Heights, through our Discovery Centre team, and similarly for synchrotron, there's options available as well. So if anyone's interested, get in touch with me and I'll help out there.
Yeah. So just while I can see a couple of people writing some questions. So where are your main locations if people were to do site visits or
our main locations are, our biggest site is the Lucas Heights facility just outside Sydney in Sutherland Shire, and the Australian synchrotron is located in Clayton in the southeast suburbs of Melbourne. So if anyone knows where Monash University is, it's right across from there, right across Blackburn Road from there. That's our two main sites.
Okay. I think someone's just writing another question, typing away. So while they're put that in, there's one there from Malcolm. Thanks for the offer to discuss industry challenges. I'll chat with my MD and see what might have in mind that's a problem. So
absolutely.
Malcolm might reach out. So while we've got someone else typing, is there anything further that you'd like to add, Robert, that you think would be valuable for our manufacturers online today?
No, the main thing I want to leave you with is that there's a lot of ways that we can support industry. Get in touch and ask the question. So Malcolm, like if you need to talk to your MD before you come and talk to us. If it helps, we're always happy to have an NDA in place to cover sensitive conversations, but that can take time with the various legal teams. But if you're happy just to have a chat under the condition of confidentiality, happy to take the questions. We're very open to consultation.
Great. Okay, so I've got a question here from Daniel. Can ANSTO take the idea product to market and or look at an equity stake if the client has no funding?
It would have to be very specific conditions for that. It's not something we usually get involved with, but particularly if there's a nuclear aspect to it, then there may be scope for that. But it's something that can be discussed if there's an interest for ANSTO. It's not no.
So I guess on the back of that as well, so AMGC do have some grant funding there as well to take products to market.
Yeah.
The Advanced Manufacturing Ecosystem Fund here in the Northern Territory, specifically for, I guess, products and projects happening here in the Territory, where we can do it's a one-for-one co-investment contribution under the grant, but potentially going forward, we'll have some further funds nationally to support projects like that as well. So there are options there, Daniel, which you can have.
That'd be the sort of mechanism we'd probably be looking at as well. When we don't really hand out grant funding ourselves or commercialization funding. But partnering on something like AMGC's grants is something we would be looking into.
All right, so I think, thank you. They were great questions. I don't think there's any more coming through at the moment. So we're about on time, so please let me finish by thanking you very much for your attention. If you'd like further information on ANSTO, please reach out to Robert, who's put his email in the chat, or you can visit their website, which is ansto.gov.au. Rob, thanks again for joining us today and having the conversation, albeit how brief it was, and specifically on one couple of areas. ANSTO is a beast and has lots of capability. So if you are in that nuclear space or looking to move into that nuclear space, please reach out to Rob and get some more information.
Or any sector. We cover all of Australia's priority sectors.
Yes.
It doesn't just have to be nuclear.
No. So thank you very much, and we'll hope to see you on our next In Conversation, which will happen in about a month. Details will be on the website. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.